Sometimes rhythms that feel natural and instinctive to us in our real musical lives can look a little bit complicated on the page when they're written down. And that sometimes is the case with syncopation and ties at the eighth note level. And we're going to encounter some of those in basic rhythmic training number 51. But if we keep in mind the same basic methods and the same basic principles that we've been using all along, it's going to be pretty easy to make sense of this. Let's take a look at basic rhythmic training number 51. And the first thing I want to point out that you see above here is that a group of 4 eighth notes can be brought together or tied together in several different ways. And let me just actually write out 4 eighth notes here, just as they do in the book. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to beam them all together. If this was in 2/4 time, this would be easy enough to count out. 1 and 2 and. So I would say ta on every single note. Ta, 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 ta. I'll do that in tempo. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and ta, 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 ta. Easy enough. But think of all the ways in which I could tie 2 adjacent eighth notes together. And you see one of those ways right here. I could, for instance, tie the first 2 notes together like this, which means I would hold out that first ta for the 1 and the and. So I'd go 1 and 2 and ta, ta, ta. Notice, by the way, that's exactly the same as writing. Tying those first 2 eighth notes is exactly the same as writing quarter note, eighth, eighth. I would say exactly the same thing. 1 and 2 and ta, ta, ta. So that's pretty easy. I could also tie together 2 eighth notes, the last 2 eighth notes right here, like this. In which case, I would say ta, ta on the first 2 eighth notes. I would say ta on the 3rd eighth note. But then on the 4th eighth note, I would just hold out that ta, like this. So I would go 1 and 2 and ta, ta, ta. Which, by the way, is exactly the same as writing out this figure. 2 eighth notes and a quarter note, because, again, a quarter note is just simply 2 eighth notes tied together. Or we can think of it as 2 eighth notes tied together. Ta, ta, ta. And perform it the exact same way. So let me, and those 2 instances we've come up against before. So let me give you a new one, which is the one that you see over here to the left in the book. What if we tied together the middle 2 eighth notes right here, like this? So 1 and 2. We're tying together the and 2 and. Well, I would simply say the first ta on the first eighth note, say the second ta on the second eighth note, and then hold that second ta out over the 3rd eighth note, over beat 2. And then say ta on the final eighth note. So 1 and 2 and ta, ta, ta. Which gives us a little bit of a feeling of syncopation, or accenting that unaccented beat. In fact, that's exactly what they're showing you right here. This figure can be also written out like this. 1 eighth note, 1 quarter note, which again is just simply 2 eighth notes tied together, or we can think of it as 2 eighth notes tied together, and then another eighth note. I would perform this exactly the same way. It's going to sound exactly the same way whether I'm performing this up here or this down here. 1 and 2 and ta, ta, ta. Pretty easy. So now let's take a look at number 51. Now that we understand that, all we're going to do is we're going to be very clear and very careful about where our 1 and 2 ands fall on every single beat, on every single note. So, and again, I encourage you to write out the beats right above the measures. That's always something that you're encouraged to do. So 1 and 2 and 3. I'm sorry, we're in 2/4 time. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So on beat 1, I say ta. On the and of 1, I say ta. On beat 2, I say ta, and then I hold that ta out for the and of 2 and for the first eighth note on beat 1, because all three of those are tied together. I have 2 eighth notes here, and then I have 1 eighth note here. So I'm going to hold out that ta for 1, 2, 3 eighth notes. Then I'm going to say ta here, and ta here, and ta here, because I have 3 eighth notes. So ta on the and of 1, ta on beat 2, ta on the and of 2. Let me just perform those two measures for you with the metronome. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and ta 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 ta. All right, let's break down measures 3 and 4 in the same way. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. And notice, by the way, in measure 3 we have this figure that we had figured out up here, that eighth note, quarter note, eighth note figure. So on beat 1, I say ta. On beat 2, I say ta, and then I hold that ta through, I'm sorry, on the end of 1, I say ta, and then I hold that note through beat 2. And the and of ta, on the and of 2, I say ta again. Then on beat 1, I say ta, and I'm going to hold that first beat, or I'm going to hold that ta through and 2 and, like that. So if I perform just those, just measures 3 and 4 by themselves, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and ta 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 ta. So let me now perform measures 1, 2, 3, and 4, the entire first line of this basic rhythmic training example. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and ta 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 ta. It's as simple as that. I'm going to let you work on and figure out measures 5, 6, 7, and 8. It's going to be exactly the same technique, and I think you should be able to do it. So again, if you have any questions, bring them to our work sessions, and we will figure them out. But that is the basic technique. Just always account for the 1 and 2 and of every single measure, and you will never go wrong.